Hey, Jesus fans, welcome to True North Podcast, where we grow closer to God together. This podcast was brought to you by Solid Rock Church in Irving, Texas, and our host, Pastor Ed Snyder. To find out more about this podcast, visit our website at truenorthdfw.org. Now let's join Pastor Snyder in a new direction and a new destination.
And welcome to another episode of True North Podcast. Your host here, Pastor Snyder, and we're glad that you're joining us again. We are just again amazed at our listener base that is growing. The books are flying off the virtual shelf. It is amazing how that this God is really blessing all of this, and we're very excited. So therefore, we want to start off today's podcast with a huge thank you. Thank you to you as a listener for joining us again today. Help us by sharing this podcast. Go to our social media, sign on with us at our different levels or platforms of social media, Facebook, internet, or Instagram, and Twitter. And so, again, we got to get the word out. We got a lot to say, got a lot of information to give, because our mission and goal is to help people become better. So today we're going to be talking about the TMZ of the beast world. We're going to rip the lid off of our emotions. So we'll be right back. All right. So again, we're going to talk about the TMZ of the beast world. We're going to unveil or rip the lid off of our emotions. What are they? How do they work? How do they fit together? We've got some great episodes in the future. We've got some episodes that we've done pretty well on in the past. Go to our website, truenorthdfw.org, and check out our other episodes if you haven't already. But we're going to talk about the TMZ. This is actually chapter 5 of the book Control the Beast. If you haven't purchased that, you're welcome to go to Amazon.com and do a search on Control the Beast, Ed Snyder. It'll pop there. And I strongly recommend buy a copy, read the chapter, listen to the podcast, and get as much as you can out of this project to help us manage our emotions and make our world a whole lot better. All right. So most of you, if not all of you, really understand and know when I say TMZ, that is a news program. I guess you would call it a news program that kind of reveals dark secrets and escapades and unearth the facts of famous people. And so today we're going to rip the lid. We're going to reveal the dark secrets, the wild escapades, and unearth the facts of our emotions. Why do we need to do that? Because we have to relate back to chapter 1 of the book, and that is the power of understanding. When we understand the why, the what, the how, and all of that stuff, then we can handle things a whole lot better. So really, that's what these podcasts and the book is all about, is to give us understanding of our emotions and how it fits together, and how God takes care of that for us. And so let's get started. First, I want to talk about a verse of scripture in Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse number 9. We're taking this from the Amplified Version. And that verse says, "The heart is deceitful above all things, and it is extremely sick. Who can understand it fully and know its secret motive?" So again, the heart is deceitful above all things. So we're going to be talking about levels here, stages that we go through in our emotions. But again, in going back to the original thought of the power of understanding, we've got to realize, number one, where does our emotions come from? Well, emotions, again, is our feelings. It's how we interrelate with each other. Emotions is, again, a wave of different levels, intensity, joy, love, peace, happiness, frustration, depression, anxiety, fear, anger, All of those are positive and negative emotions. Not that the negatives are evil or make you evil. It really, the problem is they go around unchecked. They go around in the secret dark places and try to cause problems or do things that are not healthy and good for us. Now, in the big beast of our emotional cage is anger. And anger is a natural emotion. Remember, we've talked about this and we discuss it more in the book, how that when we discover anger as a negative emotion, but that doesn't make that emotion evil. It doesn't make you evil because you've got an anger issue. It's unchecked. And we're going to be talking about how anger is a secondary emotion. There's always a primary emotion that, again, is not in check. It's running wild. It's growing and escalating. So more about that here in just a little bit. So again, these emotions, when they're present, they do pose a potential problem in every human being. That's a reality, folks. When an emotion is unchecked, even love, it just, here's the key. Everything's got to be balanced. Okay. We all want to be happy. I love happy. I love positive. But, when someone is too happy too much, it's an imbalance. It's like a cash drawer of a cash register. If you don't have enough money at the end of the day, then there's a problem. Okay, there's not enough money. A transaction was done wrong. The drawer is under. If you count the drawer and put it against the sales, and there's too much money, you have shortchanged one of your customers and didn't give them enough change back. So too much is not good, and not enough is not good. It's got to be a balance of our emotions. All right. Now, the scripture out of Jeremiah that we talked about, how the heart is deceitful above all things. Here's something that we need to understand. Knowing something is one thing. Feeling something is a whole nother realm. And again, what we know comes through our brain. What we hear, what we see, we ingest it emotionally, we ingest it intellectually, and it hits our brain. We think about it. We think about what that person said. We think about how that person reacted. Was it a right reaction? Was it a wrong reaction to us? And the human mind has a tremendous ability and talent to create things that are not there. It's not real. But the problem is when that thought or that thinking gets into our heart. The Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. What we feel is what we say. All right. Something that we have to realize is our emotions cannot be trusted. Okay. I want you to hear that. Our emotions cannot be trusted. That's why Jeremiah said in chapter 17 and verse 9, the heart is deceitful above all things, and it is extremely sick. Who can understand it fully and know its secret motive? So again, when we realize that emotions cannot be totally trusted, even though, man, we want to ride that wave of happiness and joy. But again, it's like that cash drawer. If we've got too much money in the cash drawer at the end of the day, we've got problems. If we don't have enough cash in that drawer, we still have problems. Balance. We've got to strive for balance. So when we realize the emotions and how they do not display uncontrolled anger, which results in violent behavior, we've got an issue. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25 through 31 is a great reference for spiritual encouragement, especially for the negative emotions. Thus, anger in itself, again, is not bad or evil, but it becomes bad when it is unbridled. Okay, that's the exposure that we're going to talk about today. All right, is the exposure of the negative emotions that is within us. All right, again, we go back to, and I know it sounds repetitive, but repetition is the best teacher when we hear it again and again and again and again. In the power of understanding these negative emotions that involving rage and aggression and anger come from the part of our brain that is tied to emotions, the subconscious mind. We talked about that again in a past podcast. So, and also we have to realize that the body is a fantastic machine. You know, one of our primary responses to danger is fear. Okay. Have you ever heard of the fight or flight syndrome? You know, where our body automatically prepares physically when we feel threatened, either to fight its way through or to get out of there because we know we don't have a chance to do it. So again, our primary reaction to danger, whether it's real or perceived, is what biologists call fight or flight. Now, here's something that we need to realize that about our emotions. And in our classes, I give this example. You know, we're walking down a dimly lit street, and it's maybe not the best of neighborhoods, but we've got to get to where we're going, and this is the route. We walk past a dark alley, and our mind is already kicked in gear. What's in that alley? And so as we walk past the opening of that alley, we hear a noise. Suddenly, we not only to the emotional response, we have a physical response. Break out into sweat. Eyes get big. Breath starts to go really fast. Blood pressure goes up, and we step up. Okay, so we're scared if fear has hit us. Now, when reality sets in that the noise was a cat that knocked a can over or something, there was no danger present at all, but what we thought, what we perceived was very real. Now let's rewind. Let's go back down that dimly lit street. Let's go back in front of that dark alley. And all of a sudden a guy jumps out and puts a .357 Magnum in your face and says, "Give me all your money." Fear hits you. You start breaking out in sweat. Your blood pressure goes up. Your breathing starts to increase and goes faster. You feel scared and you feel danger. Now, that is not perceived. That is real because the gun barrel is in your face. Now, here's the point, ladies and gentlemen, whether it's real or whether it's perceived, whether you think that you're in danger or you know you're in danger, the emotions are just as powerful and just as real, whether they have a base to it or not. That's what we've got to realize and understand. And how do we fix that? We get real. We understand something about our emotions that we need facts. So when we're going through life and we've got things that we've got to deal with, the most important thing about all of this is, are we dealing with something real or perceived? When we react, even good or positive, it does not matter. When we fall in love with somebody, we need to find out, is this real or is it perceived? Do I think they love me? Do I think that I have a relationship with this person, or do I know it for a fact? All right. Fear, anger. When we get angry with somebody, we go into a rage. You know, again, the emotions, whether perceived or real, is just as powerful and just as motivational. However, are we dealing with facts? That's what we've got to get to, ladies and gentlemen. In the TMZ of the beast world, we have to grab a hold of what is we call reality. We got to get into reality. Now, here's something else about emotions. In spite of what people think, anger, fear, it doesn't just occur. It has to be keyed in. Okay. Let me bring it to you this way. You know, we have unresolved conflict in our marriage. You know, there's a problem, there's an argument, there's a conflict, and It's never dealt with properly. It's never sat down, talked through, understanding applied to it, and apologies made, and behavior correction is done. Okay. We just keep letting it float out there. We just keep trying to ignore it and hope it goes away. Never going to happen. And then all of a sudden, the guy comes home and catches his wife in bed with another man. The rage just goes crazy, and screaming, hollering, and possibly physical harm comes to somebody. All right. That, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't happen overnight. It is a buildup of unresolved conflicts and arguments that's never been resolved. And finally, the big kahuna, the main event, takes place. And then we go over the edge. So since we understand that anger, fear, all of these emotions are not just flip the switch and it's on, it's keyed in. There's been a whole lot of undercurrent going on. There's been a whole lot of unresolved conflict that has never been dealt with. We've got to realize that since that is true, people can also learn to control, channel, and even short circuit the negative emotions. We can get them under control. The genie in the bottle pops out from a single emotional step. But anger, especially anger, is the end product. It's never the beginning. Again, when we walk into the main event and we go into outer space with our anger, that is not the beginning. That is the end product. So when we are in a normal situation, a normal person does not go from calmness to anger instantly. So in order to control this, in order to manage this, it's very important, at least manage to contain it. The person has got to understand what we're talking about, and that is how it's developed. All right? Now, here's something else that we need to understand about our emotions. Again, as I mentioned, there's always a primary emotion. Because anger and rage, that's second and third levels. We have a primary that is walking around and dwelling in our heart, because our heart is the seat of emotion, not our minds. Our mind is where the thought comes from. Our mind is all about intellect. The heart is where the emotions, the feelings come from. And by what we feed our minds is how our emotions are developed. So, in spite of what we think, this doesn't happen. It's got to be developed. Now, where's the nature? What is a primary emotion? A primary emotion is depression. Let's see, anxiety. Here's the big kahuna, frustration. We're frustrated all the time. We've got that person at work that just frustrates us. We've got that person at home that just, if these teenagers don't grow up, they're not going to live to tell it. Frustration just always nagging at us. When that frustration is not dealt with, when that aggravation is not dealt with, then it escalates to anger. When anger is not dealt with, then it escalates to rage. Okay? Disappointment, sadness, things like that, emotional hurt. Somebody says something that hurts our feelings. We need to deal with that. Because if we don't deal with the emotional hurt as a primary emotion, then it goes to the secondary, which is not only anger and depression, but emotional trauma, paranoia can develop on the secondary stage. The third stage, if we don't deal with this stuff, as I mentioned a minute ago, is rage. And perhaps here's another not good situation, clinical depression. So now our emotions have gone over the edge, and there's a fourth stage, and that's called blind rage. And I know you've probably heard that term before, of blind rage. And that's it's a real deal, and it's a very, very, very serious situation. I have had people in my classes and in my coaching time or counseling time that went into blind rage. I had one fellow years ago who did $5,000 of damage to his mother's kitchen and denied every bit of it. I mean, they saw him. They watched him rip the cabinets off the walls and destroyed things, but he had no memory of it. Why? Because the rage was so intense that it went blind. He went into action and did not know what he was doing. He had no memory. That's blind rage. That's some serious stuff. And so, again, we have to realize in the beginning where it's at and nip it in the bud now. Now, here's something else that you may not know. Anger develops out of fear. Anger begins as fear. Now, anger is not isolated to men, but actually it finds its most productive environment in the nature of the male mind. You know, women, our ladies, they fear abandonment. Men fear engulfment. You know, and now listen to that. Women fear abandonment. Men fear engulfment. And that's where management has got to come in. You know, us guys, you know, if you get kind of too close sometimes, we feel smothered. You know, if we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to go here, we got to go here, we got to. And we're like, wait a minute, I need some space. I need to go get a cup of coffee. I need some hang out with the guys time. Where ladies feel just the opposite. When they are alone, they kind of feel something that's familiar toward abandonment. Why aren't you home? Why do you have to go out with the guys all the time? It's normal. It's a part of us, but we have to manage it. So men are afraid that they're going to lose their identity. Thus, in men, anger starts as fear and works into impatience. Impatience then springs out of fear of being ignored. You know, us guys, we got a little bit of an ego and we've got to be heard, you know, pay attention to. And again, the feelings of being lost in the shuffle intensifies in time, situations, and continues without being resolved. So men then react to becoming irritated, tense, hypersensitive, and on and on. Frustration. Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's rip the lid off of frustration, a primary emotion. Frustration usually, and most of the time, like 90% of the time, is a result of unattained goals. Now, I'm not talking about making $1 million. I mean, small stuff, like daily stuff. I need to get this done. I need to get the oil changed in the car, and I got to get the carpet cleaned in the living room, and I've got to get this and this and this. We got that little to-do list, that to us guys, that honey-do list that we've got to accomplish. And when we don't get those done, we get frustrated. You know, the oil still needs to be changed. The carpet still needs to be cleaned. I got to get that garage cleaned out. You know, I've got to rearrange the kitchen cabinets, or I've got to fix the barbecue grill, or whatever the case is. Often this results from unreasonable goals. Maybe the honey-do list is too big, or the accomplishments are too big of an order to fill. We got to look at that. That's where management comes in. So, as I mentioned, frustration is a primary emotion, and if it's not dealt with, okay, slow down. Readjust those goals. Readjust that to-do list. Yes, the carpet does need to be clean, but maybe not this afternoon. Why don't we schedule that for next week? Okay, so we know we've got the carpet's going to get cleaned next week, but this week the oil is going to get changed. Whatever it takes to slow that pace down so that we can deal with the frustration so it won't escalate to the next level and cause even more problems, or the third level, or even, God forbid, the fourth level. So if a person is frustrated about things in their life, we've really got to take an examination of our goals and how valuable those goals are. You know, some goals that we set, maybe a great goal, maybe something that we would really like to do. You know, people call it the bucket list, but it's really not important, life-changing. And so getting frustrated about it may not be the proper thing to do. All right. So again, these feelings, again, positive and negative. Oh, they're not isolated. That's something else that we need to learn today in ripping off the lid of our emotions, unveiling our emotions, is they're not isolated. They're very much connected. They accumulate under underlying stages and continue to intensify. And one emotion is connected to another emotion. Feelings of anger will reproduce themselves. Again, grab a hold of that. You've got to understand that feelings, especially those negative ones, will reproduce themselves. And the mind, the imagination, is the fertile bed of development in all of this. Once the feelings of even anger, or let's go back down to another level of frustration, they feed on every source of offense. Our depression that we deal with, our anxiety that we deal with, our fears that we deal with, those are primary emotions. They feed off of one another, and they grab everything that is around them and suck it in. All right? So again, we've got to manage those emotions. We've got to find the place where we can calm down, relax, chill a little bit. All right? One thing that we have to realize is that we can learn to control our emotions. It's a learning process. It don't just happen. If you're going to sit around and wait for this to happen, you're going to be waiting a very, very long time. And guess what? You're going to be in a lot of trouble because it doesn't go away. Ignoring it to hope it goes away is not the remedy in managing our emotions. We have to learn how to control. We control the urge. We control the reaction, and when we control it, we evaluate it. When we evaluate it, we find solutions to it. And when we find solutions to it, thus we are now managing our emotions. We've got to take personal responsibility. That's the key, is taking personal responsibility. All right? Here's a fundamental question. Is emotions inherited? We all have the same set of emotions. Sometimes the intensity is a combination of an inherited emotional psyche and the environmental emotions that we learn. Okay. So when you do your evaluation, as we wrap up our time together, when you do your evaluation, you've got to realize, was there a generation behind me that was prone to this? In other words, was it an inherited emotional trait that I've got? Or is it environmental? We talked about the 6 triggers a couple of episodes ago. We've got to realize, have I got a trigger in my life that's triggering my emotional upset? All right. So we need to reiterate that despite what is genetically inherited and what is learned from our environment growing up, or what seems acceptable to a few, we can change when it comes to expressing our emotions. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not what you say, it's how you say it that makes all the difference in the world. It takes determination, it takes willful self-discipline, and keep in mind that it is not, again, what we say, it's the presentation of what we're saying. So we have to be aware of our personal responsibility. You have a buy-in on this. It's not everybody else that's caused us trouble. Actually, I've caused the trouble because I'm not reacting properly, and I've got to learn how to react properly. That's it. That's really the TMZ of the beast world. All right, folks, thank you for joining us again today. Next week, we're going to be talking about don't play games with the beast. We're going to diffuse our negative emotions. We're going to learn how to diffuse those negative emotions so that we can feel a little more positive about ourselves. Hope you enjoyed our time together. Thank you for being a listener of True North Podcast with Pastor Snyder. And again, if you haven't, go out to Amazon.com, Control the Beast, Ed Snyder. It'll pop, buy the book, and let's read. God bless. Have a great day on purpose.
Thank you for joining us at True North Podcast. You can find us on iHeartRadio or any other podcasting platform. If you want to have any questions, visit us at truenorthdfw.org. We'll catch y'all next week.